What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Jonas, and with me, as always, is my main man, Mr. David Fuchs.
What's up, Joe?
David, I got the Knicks background.
I got no good background right now,
This is usually
um,
your thing. I'm stealing your thing because
I know I got my team on my hat. I got Penn State. I know. I'm failing with the background, especially as we kick off this new cycle. But love it. Love the Knicks background.
hey, this is our year, David. But I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna jinx it. This is the only time I'm gonna put it up. Beginning of the season, we cross our fingers. We never get excited as New York fans. We know it.
Yeah, you'll probably have it back up when we're doing like the July cycle when they're making their little playoff run.
Damn right. Damn right. It'll be back up. I'll be wearing my Knicks polos at that point.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I'm sure you will.
so, obviously the cycle has ended. November is now over.
Yep.
And we're kind of in this nice little lull in between exams where you and I get to talk about some other things that we normally don't get to talk about once we're in cycle. These are some of
hmm
my favorite topics that we get to talk about. One of the things that you always hear people saying is, well, I wish I started earlier. Oh man, I ran out of time at the end. I was rushing into the end. I took the last week off and I just was studying and I just didn't have enough time, or life got so busy that I couldn't do it. And no matter what ends up happening, I think everybody ultimately feels that way, where no matter how much you study, they always kind of feel
Yeah,
like started late, or maybe they didn't take it seriously enough at first.
everybody. Yep. It's everybody says it.
So, if you're sitting here and you're giving it advice and you're saying, all right, here's best practice, would you focus more on the beginning of studying or the middle of studying?
I mean, I don't know if it would necessarily be between like the beginning or the middle. I think that the main point is that the earlier you start, the better. Because and even at that point, you're still gonna get to the end of the cycle and you're gonna be like, damn, I wish I had a little bit more time, or I wish I started like a little bit earlier. It's just natural. You're always gonna think you have more time. So the earlier you start, the better. You don't want to get to the end of your your prep process and now you're a week out and now you're sitting there saying, I know I started 3 months before, but I wish I started maybe 2 weeks earlier. So right now we're recording this, or that this is going to come out, shortly after the November cycle, the middle of November. The March cycle is in for, what, another 4 months at least, another,
Yeah, it's actually late March. So this is a very late CFP March exam. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's the 18th through the
yeah,
20th.
it does. It starts the 18th. So like you have 4 months from now. And I know that it's natural for people to be like, oh, I have 4 months. I could start maybe the beginning of December, or I'll start right before or right after the holidays. In my opinion, my best advice would be just start it now. Just start. And even if it's light flashcards, even if it's like easy topics, just start it now, just so you can get the ball rolling. And so when you get to the end, you're not saying to yourself, damn, I wish I started 2 weeks earlier, or I wish I started even a week or a couple of days earlier.
I like that advice a lot. I'm going to caveat that because I think that works for some people. Here's the flip side of that. The one thing that I think a lot of people end up doing is getting started early for the sake of getting started early. Okay,
Uh-huh.
cool. The exam isn't all the way until March, right? It's the beginning of November. I theoretically have 4.5 months. That's 18 weeks. So I get started light, right? And I get started and I start doing a little bit here and a little bit there. And in my mind, I've started, so I'm good. I think the more important part is when you start to take it seriously. And
hmm
this is something you really have to know yourself. And I think for somebody like you, David, who studies the way that you do, I think the earlier the better because you are very pragmatic. You like doing things in their time. You're a very organized guy. For some of us, you can start a little bit later, but take it more seriously sooner. I
Yeah.
hear when you start, but you got to be serious about it and be committed to it and sticking to a plan. And I'll tell you, there's two ways you can go about it. And David, your way is start light and just start kind of chopping at it little by little,
Yeah.
then gradually start to build up.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're not,
100%.
and you got to know yourself. So this type of studying only really works for somebody who can actually do that. And you got to know yourself. If you know that if I set up a plan that's really gradual, I'm not going to take it serious. So I'm going to do a little bit here or there, but my head's not really in it. I'm just doing it for the sake of. Don't bother. It's a waste of fucking time. Don't do it. I would rather you start a little later and then front load your study.
Yeah. And I thought you made a really, I think that's a great point in terms of like knowing yourself. Because for me, you nailed it on the head. I like to start earlier and then ease into it and kind of chip away early. And then at some point, eventually, yes, it's going to get intense. I kind of do that with everything. Like I always like say when we're going on a trip or we're leaving somewhere to go for the weekend and we have to pack a bag. Like a lot of people, what do? They wake up like the day of and they just throw clothes into a bag. Like for me, what I do, and this I think it's a pretty good analogy, is like, and this sounds like ridiculous, but like 4 days before I'm going to be leaving to go somewhere, I'll start gradually packing my bag. And what that means is the first night, I may just do like my boxers and my socks and some like, some shorts to like chill. Then I'll throw in the next day maybe some athletic stuff that I can wear during the day. And then the next day is a little bit now it's the nice outfits, it's the dinner outfits, it's all the other stuff. And then by the time I get to the day before, I'm pretty much packed already. I need to do some refining and some tuning up and maybe swapping some stuff out. I know I sound like a huge girl right now, but but swapping some stuff in, adding the bathroom stuff and whatever, but that's my process, and I find that that works really well for me. And I think that you can apply that to studying for this exam, meaning early on, you start earlier than you may necessarily need to, or earlier than it may make sense to, but you do some light stuff early. Then you get to a point where you start doing the more intense, heavy stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the end, you kind of fine tune some stuff.
I think the analogy is spot on. And now personally, I can't believe you pack 4 days in advance.
It's like 3, 4, like like it's somewhere in that
Don't lie.
range.
Don't lie now that the people know. But I like what you said because it's know thyself, right? It is
Yeah.
ultimately you know that that's the way you like to do it because it keeps your stress level down and it also gives you the latitude to go, oh, I don't have my toothpaste. Let me run to CVS and get toothpaste. I don't
Right.
have this shampoo. Let me go and get the shampoo. I got to order something on Amazon. Well, if it's the night before or the day of, I'm kind of screwed.
You ain't getting it.
Now I'm shit out of luck at this point,
Yeah.
which I really appreciate. And if that's the type of person you are, be honest with yourself and go, if that's the way, and David's analogy is great. Like if it's just my underwear and my socks, that's your flashcards that you're starting with your
Right.
flashcards, you're getting it going, right? Now I'm starting to park my dinnerware. Okay, now I'm starting to do some application stuff. Then I'm doing some critical thinking stuff. Now
Yep.
I'm starting to put it all together that day of or the day before, which is my mock exams and my practice tests. And that is an incredible analogy here is that how you pack your bag is a really great analogy. Honestly, we didn't even come up with that in show notes.
No, I came up with it on the spot.
That's how all the great stuff happens right there.
Yeah. Well, you said you have to know yourself. And I was like, yeah, well, that is me. And I was like, what else in my life do I do that with? And I'm like, oh, like great analogy because I'm going away this weekend, actually, literally right after we record this. And I was like, oh, that's when you go away and I have to pack a bag. Like it's kind of similar to what we're talking about right now. Like start early. Just
Yeah,
get started.
amazing analogy. And I think now when you think about that for if you're somebody that needs a little bit of pressure to get going, don't start that process because one, it's useless, and two, you're not really going to get a whole lot out of it. And the key to this CFP process is you want to put the when you're studying, you want to be moving the needle. And that doesn't mean the needle's always going from 0 to 100. It means sometimes you take one step. And there are other times where you're taking 3 or 4 steps. But ideally, you want most of the activities that you're doing to move the needle for you. And if you are somebody that took the exam in the past and you failed, your natural emotional reaction is, I got to do something. So I'm doing something for I'm just moving. And I get that. It is a total natural reaction. I've done it. You've done it. We've all done it where we feel the need to do something because we didn't get the result that we wanted. So now we're kind of spinning our wheels a little bit. And it's very hard to sit down and go, I need to be honest about who I am and how I do this because no matter what, the process is going to get intense.
Mhm.
How quickly it gets intense is really up to you. So if you're somebody that's like, I need some pressure, then don't start 16 weeks out, start 10. But then your plan is your plan and there's no deviating from your plan.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
all in right away. If you're
Yeah.
a person that needs a little bit more time and maybe you're not, I'm not packing on Monday for Friday, maybe I'm packing on Tuesday or Wednesday, then that kind of tells you, engages where you need to start. Now, and be honest, if you think you need more time, and the general consensus is the more time, the better. Let's
Yeah.
caveat that. That's not always true. The thing is that it's not the more time, the better. It's the more time that you're applying and the more time that you're learning, the better. And so, however long it takes you to ramp up into that mode is going to be the answer of how long you should be studying.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. And I still would say to most people, like if someone that's taking it in March, or even whenever comes to me and asks, hey, what's your advice? Like the last cycle just ended, it's 4 months. I would say, you know what? Just get started now. Just get it going. Just bite the bullet and get the train on the track and just go. You don't have to do it so intensely. I'm not telling you to start doing estate planning questions right now, but just like get going. Aside from if you go too hard and burn yourself out over 4 months, what is the real downside to getting started earlier than later?
You burn out.
Well, I'm saying aside from burning out,
And that's a big
aside
one,
from
but it's a big one. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, for sure, 100%, and I know that, but that's why I'm saying when you start now, which I think honestly makes more sense than the people that say, "Oh, I'll wait and then I'll put myself under a shit ton of pressure." But aside, that's what I'm saying. When you start now, start light. Don't start doing mock exams now. I'm not telling you to start doing that. I'm not telling you to start learning estate planning right now. I'm just saying start maybe
all right,
learning
all
some
right. So
definitions.
let me play devil's advocate for a second. How do I start light? Because flashcards feel like I'm not really studying or doing anything at all.
Light reading, start,
What does that mean? So I'm like just flipping through.
just start getting familiar with like, yeah, like honestly, start getting just and honestly, it may not even be actually necessarily straight up trying to learn stuff. It may just well may not try, and let me say that again. It may not be where you're intentionally trying to learn stuff. It may be just start looking at some stuff, start getting familiar with the words and the language and the definitions, and maybe look some of the equations. You're not going to memorize them now, but start seeing like what's going to go into it. So when you actually start studying, it's not a completely new language.
So let me
That's,
ask you this. When you say start light, does it mean a little bit of time or not, or keeping the intensity down, or both?
I guess it could be a little bit of both, but I would say it's more keeping the intensity down
Hmm.
and slowly start transitioning to, all right, I mean, Joe, you played sports. Like you've been a part of football weeks where you're getting ready for a game. You know what's starting light. You have some days where it's a walkthrough or it's a light workout or it's and then there's days where we're gonna go through the complete game plan. We're doing the Oklahoma drill, blah, 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 all that stuff. So like that's what I mean by start light and start a little less intensely and start earlier and because again, like the last thing you want to do is be in a position like the week of or even the day of the exam and say to yourself, shit, like I kind of wish I can go back and start like 2 weeks before I did. Like you
I
don't want to be in that
I
situation.
agree with you on that one, but here's where I'm going to disagree with you. I think that no, and I will say the lesser sin is to start earlier than later. I agree with you there.
Yeah,
As a
for sure.
general rule, you probably starting a little earlier will probably be a much bigger plus to your studying than a much bigger minus. I think, if you're starting now, I agree with you. I don't think there's much downside to it. If you're going for 6 months, I think now we're starting to get into burnout territory.
Yeah, that's too early.
So
That's
I think,
before the last exam ended.
right. So like I think, yeah, at this point, even if you put in 4 months of very moderate studying, you're gonna be in great shape. I think the one highlight that I think you really hit on is, simmering in the material. The longer you simmer in the material, the more it's gonna make sense.
Exactly.
So now starting light, and this is the big thing, doesn't mean that it's undisciplined. Okay. And here's what I mean by that.
Good question.
If
Good
you
question.
if you're playing football, and even if your practices, we have light practices for 2 weeks, those practices are at the same time, you're doing the same things, you're still have some level of intensity, you're just not going all out. That starting light doesn't mean I do some flashcards on Monday. I read for a half hour on Thursday. I do a little bit on the weekend, and it's an all over the place process. Starting light still means you are following a plan. You're just not really going over 90 minutes. Your intensity out of 10, if we were to say your intensity is out of 10, never really goes above a 5 or a 6.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what being light means. And I think that's really important to make that definition clear, because I think, like, when I played football in high school, our coaches were more on us on those light days than they were on our normal practice days, because they knew everybody was going to be like, it's the end of the week, we're in uppers. Well, the guys are just going to shut off. And so
Yeah.
screaming at us on those days, run your routes, hit your blocks, hit your blocks. We would all kind of be like, oh, this is a screw around day. And this was the hit. Oh, and our coach would be like, what are you doing? Why are you changing everything you did all week?
Yeah.
Because we are doing the same thing. The intensity, instead of being a 9 or a 10, is a 5 or a 6, but doesn't mean that it's a 2 or a 3. And I think that is the most important part when we say starting light. It means you're starting to get into a routine. And this is something we do in our pre-work for a group class, where it's start at an hour a day and build it. So when the intensity does happen, you're ready to go for 3 hours. By the 6 week mark, you're really starting to be ready to sit down and study for it's very difficult to go from studying 0 to studying to 3 hours. It's a lot easier to go from an hour to an hour 20 to an hour 40 to 2 to
Yeah. There was something that you said maybe like 3 minutes ago. But I didn't want to
you
interrupt you.
rambling bastard.
Yeah, no, and I wanted to say so. Oh, about even if it's late, it still doesn't mean you're not sitting there just kind of, fucking off, like studying while you're scrolling through Instagram. Like the whole process here, no matter what the day is, no matter what the time is, what part of the process you're in, or what you're doing that day, like everything needs to be kind of planned. Everything needs to be part of the process. Everything needs to be part of like a disciplined strategy. So yes, I 100% am with you on that. Even though it's light, don't make it where it's light and it's a day in high school where you have a sub teacher. Like you still need to have a plan, and you still need to have like you still need to stay on track when you're doing these light studying sessions. Regardless, doesn't matter. I would just, if I'm giving you advice, and again, this is coming out like middle of November, so right before Thanksgiving. If you want to wait till after Thanksgiving, that's fine. I don't think you're going to kill yourself if you do, but my advice would be, just get started now. You can't hurt. You're really not going to hurt yourself again unless you go too hard and you burn yourself out.
Probably not a likely scenario, but the key takeaway here is know yourself, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, studying light doesn't mean like what David just said, which is I am reading for 5 minutes, scrolling for 5 minutes. That is not studying light. That's not studying at all. That's nothing. Okay. And then number three, being disciplined. That is the key to this all. And that's something that we obviously see throughout this entire process. But I think that's a good place for us to stop. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please make sure that you're hitting the like and subscribe button so we can get more content out to more people. And we hope you guys, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, reach out to David or myself. Have a good day, everybody.